They looked like mermaids to the bleary-eyed sailors discovering the new world after many weeks at sea. But they were not the mermaids of Homer who lured sailors to their death with a haunting siren song. They were the gentle manatee, welcoming the explorers to paradise. Now, paradise has turned against the manatee, and this wondrous creature is in danger of disappearing forever. But the alarm has been sounded, and people all across Florida are trying to save the manatee and rescue paradise. This is their story.
That water down there is about 24 inches deep.
Angela, somebody else called the QB?
Cocoa Beach, Florida. A manatee is caught in a storm drain. The manatee swam into the drain in search of fresh water, but could not turn around to leave. It may have been here a week or more before it was discovered. SeaWorld is attempting a rescue.
Now, be ready when we set her down. She may kick.
You want to set her right in the truck?
Many experienced and dedicated people came out to help rescue this animal. To them, every single manatee in Florida is precious because there are so few left. A whole network of people and institutions are trying to save the manatee from extinction. This animal is lucky, since most manatees that wander into storm drains do not survive. Just a year later, two school children waiting for a school bus discover another manatee trapped in the same Cocoa Beach storm drain. When SeaWorld rescuers arrive on the scene, they find two manatees here. The drain is filled with roaches and black widow spiders. This rescue is clearly not going to be easy. The search for manatees inevitably leads us to Crystal River on Florida's west coast. Here you will find the manatee bowling lanes, dozens of manatee gift shops, and the guy who carves manatees from tree trunks with a chainsaw. At nearby Homosassa Springs State Park, tourists can see manatees in captivity.
They stay with their mothers up to 2 years.
At daily manatee shows, the animals don't do any tricks, but they do somehow capture people's hearts. But the most transcendent experience for many people is the opportunity to swim with manatees in Kings Bay, the headwaters of Crystal River. During the winter months, hundreds of manatees flock to Kings Bay to escape the cold ocean water. The bay is fed by dozens of freshwater springs that produce 600 million gallons of water daily at a consistent 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Manatees are tropical animals and can't survive long when the water temperature drops below 68 Fahrenheit. In the warmer months, manatees are generally scattered and harder to find. Normally, manatees are solitary animals. They travel alone and sometimes wander hundreds of miles up and down the Florida coast. They are constantly on the move. But the cold weather forces them to congregate where the water is warm, in places like Kings Bay. With so many manatees in one place, Crystal River becomes a magnet for people who want to swim with them.
So the trick here is if you see one and you're lucky enough to have one come up to you, don't worry about getting out of its way. Don't pursue the animal, but float quietly on the surface. Now,
during the manatee season, January through March, Bill Astruck runs several tours each day from his dive shop in Crystal River. The tours always begin with a video and a lecture about manatee etiquette. Swimming with manatees is strictly regulated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which runs the Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge, where wintering manatees are protected. Throughout the refuge, officials have roped off areas for manatee sanctuaries where no humans are allowed. People who wander under the ropes are subject to fines. Here, the manatees can, and sometimes do, escape from the hordes of people who want to swim with them each winter. The manatee is so carefully protected because it is seriously endangered. Fewer than 3,000 manatees remain in Florida, and each year more manatees die from a variety of causes than are replaced through the natural reproductive cycle. That's why there is such an effort to save these two animals trapped in a storm pipe. All across Florida, people are trying to save the manatee from extinction in a variety of ways. The odds are enormous. Manatees are the victims of civilization, their deaths sometimes the consequence of simple human thoughtlessness. The Cocoa Beach storm drain, for example, did not have screens to keep manatees out. Now, SeaWorld and Florida state officials are working feverishly to save these two animals who are sick and dehydrated from many days without food and water. The manatees have been undergirded with a sheet of plastic as rescuers slowly pull them towards the opening. They should be out soon, but they may be too ill to survive.
This is it. This is where we're getting out. We got all your people down this end? Yes. Yeah, we got one more here. We got one and two at the head end. Right there. And take that off. More.
Bob Bondi is one of those people who has dedicated his life to saving the manatee. It was love at first sight.
I hadn't seen one coming from California, and so I kind of fell in love with manatees right off, and you do the first time you get in the water with them.
Bondi is a biologist who studies and writes about manatees for the U.S. Geological Survey's Sirenia project. Bondi is looking for clues that might help save the animal from extinction.
Well, I've been studying manatees for the last 20 years, basically, and helping to write some of the books about their biology, their life history, natural history. And we're finding that after 20 years, there's still a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of books to be written.
Bondi's long-term biological research is essential to the manatee rescue effort. He and his colleagues provide critical information about manatee behavior and biology necessary to design policies and practices that might protect the manatee. But the immediate rescue of each injured manatee is also essential. The population is so low and the reproductive rate so slow that every manatee must be saved. Now, after days, possibly weeks stuck in a Cocoa Beach drainpipe, the two trapped manatees are finally freed from their accidental prison. The animals will be transported to SeaWorld for intensive care. The goal is to restore the animals to health and return them to the wild. If they survive at all, they will spend many months in captivity. This animal was not so lucky. Researchers at the Florida Marine Research Institute in Tampa are conducting a necropsy on the carcass to determine the cause of death.
That data sheet on the lymph nodes over there and write down those dimensions, maybe.
This animal, like many manatees in Florida, was killed by a speedboat. The boat struck the manatee and caused a puncture to the lung. It's likely the boat's captain didn't even know he struck the animal. The boat may have been going too fast. Speedboats are a major cause of manatee deaths and injuries. Manatees either cannot detect approaching boats or can't move out of the way fast enough.
There's an animal right there, right in front of you. There's an animal right there.
Many people come to Florida for the boating. Restricting boats is a tough sell here, but most boat-related manatee deaths are the result of direct collisions.
It's blunt trauma from the bow of the boat, from the outdrive, from the stern, or from the skeg, from the rudder, different things like that are just plowing through the water too fast and hitting the manatee. Manatees would be fine if they weren't mammals and didn't have to come to the surface to breathe air. But because they break that little two-dimensional plane that they share with boats, it makes them vulnerable. So that's the price they have to pay. I think in general, manatees are very careful at getting away from boats and avoiding boats. But can you imagine just having to live, eat, and breathe, and sleep 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 50 or 60 years by the freeway? and you couldn't take a breath on the side of the road. You had to run out in the middle of the lane and take your breath, then run back. Imagine what it's like to be a manatee out there today. It's a tough world.
The typical wild manatee is covered with scars and nicks, the result of numerous encounters with boat propellers. Ironically, it's these scars that make Bob Bondi's research possible.
Most manatees, or all manatees, would look the same if they didn't have any of these unique scar patterns. And by taking those unique scar patterns, we can match them from one day to the next.
Bondi photographs the scar patterns on the animals and makes notes about the manatee's condition. The Sirenia project has followed some individual manatees for more than 20 years. Researchers have learned about everything from manatee reproductive patterns to its lifespan. The manatees seem to cooperate with Bondi, as if they understand the importance of his work.
When we go up, we approach the animal. I try to determine roughly the size, how long it is, what sex the animal is, what reproductive status it's in. If it's a female that's part of a mating group, that's important information to know.
Efforts to save the manatee in Florida combine the methodical approach of scientists like Bondi and the heroic efforts to capture and rehabilitate injured manatees by organizations like SeaWorld. Both are necessary. Hopefully, they are not too late.
Getting it.
They're a very sincere, very interesting, very curious, very intelligent animal. So it's kind of fun because you start to see personalities in the manatees.
Nature photographer and Endangered Mermaids co-producer Jonathan Bird became fascinated with manatees the very first time he climbed into the water with one. In the winter of 1999, he returned to Crystal River with assistant Greg Brunshuttle to film manatees close up and document the effort to save manatees from extinction.
Until you've gotten in the water and been eye to eye with such a big animal and interacted with this animal and seen that it is friendly, you can't really describe to somebody else what's so amazing about this animal.
Jonathan is using a special piece of diving equipment that will allow him to get closer to manatees than is possible with ordinary scuba gear. It's called a rebreather.
Scuba bubbles make a lot of noise, and they draw their attention sometimes from hundreds of yards away. So scuba gear is just another way of announcing to manatees, hey, I'm a human and I'm here to play. A rebreather doesn't announce that.
The rebreather produces few bubbles and little noise. Carbon dioxide is absorbed, and the diver breathes pure oxygen. At depths below 30 feet, pure oxygen is deadly to divers, but most manatees are filmed at between 5 and 10 feet. The rebreather uses a chemical called soda lime to absorb the carbon dioxide. The soda lime must be replaced according to a strict schedule, or the diver could easily pass out and drown. But the rebreather allowed for some spectacular shots of manatees in the wild.
It gave me a lot of time underwater to sit around and wait for things to happen. And it didn't make any noise, so I didn't disturb the animals. And after a while, they would go about their business and pretty much ignore me. I was able to watch as a manatee would sleep. So I could just sit there, and a manatee would be 2 feet in front of me, completely zonked out, sleeping on the sand. And if I had scuba gear on, it could never sleep. It would wake right up and swim away.
The rebreather allowed Jonathan to photograph the behavior of this most curious species, molded by a remarkable evolutionary history, which is revealed as we watch a manatee calf nursing from its mother. The female's nipple is located on the underside of her flipper.
DNA testing has shown that manatees and elephants came about from the same common ancestor. An elephant has a nipple located under its front armpit. And you go to a manatee, and in its flippers, it has its nipple also located in the same place. So when you see a calf nursing, it looks very strange because it's clamped on to the mother's flipper.
Mother and calf seem to communicate in part through a series of sounds or vocalizations. Each animal may have its own sound. It's possible that mothers and calves find each other this way. Fully grown, this calf could reach 15 feet long and weigh 3,000 pounds. A female gives birth only once every 2 or 3 years, usually to a single calf, and the calf might remain with its mother for another 1 or 2 years before going off on its own. Manatees can close off their nostrils to keep water out when diving deep. When a manatee breathes, it replaces 90% of the air in its lungs, compared with about 10% for humans. This more efficient breathing means the manatee can stay underwater much longer than a person can. They normally breathe every 2 to 5 minutes, but can stay submerged for as long as 20 minutes. Even during sleep, manatees must periodically rise to breathe.
They tend to do it every 10 to 20 minutes. The manatee just gently rises up off the bottom, takes a breath, and settles back to the sand. And some studies have suggested that the manatee doesn't actually wake up to do this. It maybe does a half wake up.
The manatee slowly undulates its body and tail to swim. The flat, paddle-shaped flippers help them steer and position while swimming, and sometimes to sort of walk along the bottom. Manatees have no natural predators, so they don't have to be very fast. In fact, they move so slowly that algae grows on their backs. Fish in the springs dine on the algae, which sometimes seems to annoy the manatees. The manatee is the only marine mammal that eats just plants. That's why it's sometimes called a sea cow. Manatees spend 6 to 8 hours a day feeding and may consume between 60 and 200 pounds of vegetation, or roughly 10% of their body weight. As vegetarians, they harm no other animals and pose no danger to man. They are gentle giants that have inhabited these waters for millions of years. Their relatively sudden and rapid decline is clearly a sign of trouble in paradise. Back at the Sirenia Project's office in Gainesville, Bondi and his colleagues match the photographs and notes taken in the field with their large manatee database and update information about each animal's condition. Chip Deutsch, a colleague of Bob Bondi's at the Sirenia Project, tracks manatees with satellites to learn about their migration habits. Deutsch remembers the first time he encountered a manatee.
Well, the first time I went swimming with a manatee was in Crystal River with Bob Bondi, and we got out there just at sunrise. The mist was floating, drifting over the bay, and we could hear the exhalations of manatees, but we couldn't see them. And I got in the water not knowing quite what to expect. You know, there was a manatee that just came right up to me, swam around me, and I just exclaimed involuntarily into my snorkel. And of course, Bob was just doing his thing because that was typically normal for him. But I was really impressed by the animals. I was impressed by their curiosity, that they would come up to people. I was impressed that some of them actually were interested in interacting with me, would follow me around, and some of them even would come right up and allow you to touch the animal. And if you think about it, what large wild mammal can you do that with without getting bitten or trampled? It was a unique experience.
Deutsch tracks manatees by attaching transmitters to the animals. Military satellites pick up the signals, and the resulting data can be used to determine each animal's exact position. It turns out that manatees migrate enormous distances during the warmer months. It's not unusual for some animals to wander as far north as the Carolinas. Through Deutsch's work, researchers have learned that manatees have favorite winter refuges and summer habitats, which they return to consistently year after year. And it seems that mothers may pass these preferences on to their offspring.
We have some evidence from tagging a cow and a calf, and then after weaning, tracking the calf, that the calves are using the same migratory routes, going to the same thermal refuges in winter, and then returning to the same summer range as their mother did, but independently of her. So it seems that they're learning that during the 1 to 2 year calf dependency period.
In 1994, a manatee found in the Chesapeake Bay was captured and brought back to Florida to prevent it from being stranded when the weather turned cold. Named Chessie, the animal was tagged with a satellite transmitter and released.
Drop it. Watch the paddle, guys. Stand back.
What surprised us was in June when he took off north, moving along the coast of Georgia, the Carolinas, Chesapeake, and then he just kept on going, just like the alkaline energizer bunny. Didn't stop, went past the Statue of Liberty right to Point Judith, Rhode Island, where he finally turned around when the temperature dropped below about 20 degrees centigrade. And then he returned to Florida and made this 2,000-mile round trip in about 5 months or so. Chessie was also a remarkable animal because he was unscarred. And most animals that you see are scarred by boat strikes, but there are some animals that are streetwise and apparently can escape that, and Chessie was one of them.
Chessie has lost his transmitter, and the Sirenia project has lost track of him. The drainpipe manatees are brought to SeaWorld's intensive care facility in Orlando. Their rehabilitation will now begin. SeaWorld Orlando. Here, folks enjoy themselves and come face to face with marine life. SeaWorld has made a major commitment to saving manatees. The Last Generation exhibit is designed to alert people to the dangers manatees face. Behind the scenes, out of view of the public, is a manatee rehabilitation center. Pistachio was barely a week old when he was orphaned several months ago. He's the second smallest manatee SeaWorld was able to keep alive. SeaWorld's veterinarians developed a special formula for the calf, designed to replicate its mother's milk. SeaWorld veterinarian Mike Walsh says Pistachio has an excellent chance of survival.
He's doing great now. He's gaining weight, he's growing, he's feeding well, he's showing all the normal attitudes of a little baby manatee. He's a little leery about going back to lettuce for some reason. He may be thinking that caused part of his stomach problems, but he'll get back on it.
For adult manatees, SeaWorld uses a special tank with a floor that can be raised and lowered so that the veterinarians and handlers can easily treat the animals. Jessica and Snorkel have been here for a few months already and are well along in their treatment. Jessica is in danger of losing her flipper. She was a victim of another common danger facing manatees, human garbage, in this case, monofilament fishing line.
A couple of different reasons the entanglement's a problem is that they get into this material when they're feeding and it will wrap around their pectoral flippers. And after a time, it will start tightening down, it will cut off circulation and will just self-amputate in many cases. In other cases, they get infected and secondarily involved to where they'll get about 3 or 4 times normal size, and that can lead to an infection going back into the body and resulting in their death, although that's not as common, thank goodness. Sometimes we actually get the line crossing around the head and the neck area. We've had one this year that's back in our backyard that actually had his 2 flippers tied together as a result of the line being around both flippers. And that was on there for almost 2 years, which caused a lot of problems.
You roll over. After name sumo. 3. 1, 2, 3.
Snorkel was found seriously emaciated.
Hide is very tough, so you have to go deep in, about halfway.
Since her arrival here, she has gained weight, but today they're trying to clear a blockage in her intestine. A tube is being inserted down her throat.
The procedure we did on this morning is routine in an animal who is showing problems with constipation. In you and I, constipation can definitely be a problem, but think of it when you've got a manatee with 30 or 40 feet of GI tract that is blocked up. So what you do in a case like that is to either give them an enema or you also give them something through the mouth, such as mineral oil, which will go all the way through and help to loosen things up and expel the material that's blocking it, and then she can go back to normal eating.
This will make you feel better, Snorkel.
The treatment over, the exhausted manatees are lowered back into their pool. Lunch is waiting, and a bit of a rest. Perhaps someday soon these two animals will be released back into the wild, their health restored, their lives saved. The manatee diving expedition from Bird's Dive Shop in Crystal River has hit pay dirt. Although the weather has been unusually warm this winter, some manatees have come into Kings Bay. Bill Astruck believes he has trained his guests well, and his staff maintains a careful watch to make sure everyone stays within the rules.
There's a right and a wrong way to interact with the animal, and I know that we have to self-regulate ourselves. If we don't, I know that the government will.
Unit 4, Crystal River Base, Channel 1.
Steve Reese is a police officer with the National Fish and Wildlife Service.
It's important to me to be out here. I grew up basically in the outdoors, and I appreciate what we have. And hopefully through my job here and my career, I can maybe prolong this animal for future generations.
Everyone come over next to the boat, please. Good morning. My name's Steve Reese. I'm a federal officer with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Where's everyone from today? Are you from Florida or are you from other states?
Alabama.
Okay, Alabama. Everybody's from Alabama?
Yes, sir.
When you rented the boat this morning, did you get to watch a video called Manatee Manners?
Yes.
And you understand all the rules and regulations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then you know about chasing a manatee, right?
Uh-huh.
If one attempts to leave you, you're to let it go rather than swimming after it. Everyone's clear on that? We monitor and enforce the speed zones throughout the Kings Bay area. We also monitor the sanctuaries, which are located all throughout the bay, and we look for harassment situations where divers get over-aggressive with the animals. Anytime they significantly alter the feeding, breeding, or sheltering of the animal, that's where we step in.
These people are swimming in what amounts to the backyard of Dr. Todd Sisto and his family.
It's kind of fun to sit here, and it's almost like sitting at a cafe. You can people watch. Most of the people are very nice. They usually come by and wave and want some of what you're eating or crack some joke about free beer or something. But for the most part, people are pretty good.
The Sisto's home is located on a canal in Kings Bay. Not long ago, this was pristine wilderness.
The thing that really made me want to move here was the fact that you could just dive in here and swim in this pristine, crystal clear water with a white sand bottom, and you see big turtles back there.
But much of this pristine wilderness is now a housing development. Where once there were mangroves, now there are seawalls. This is the story of Florida. Enormous growth. And with growth has come the destruction of habitat crucial for manatee survival. Manatees are vegetarians. They eat only plants. Seawalls and other human development reduce their food source, and their natural habitat is squeezed into a smaller space made dangerous by speedboats.
It's about 1,000 people move to Florida a day, and that's every day, 365 days a year. So a lot of people are moving down to become part of Florida. And when they do, they bring their boats with them, because people want to live by the water. It's a peninsula, and there's a lot of water space. And so with that, they bring problems. But what we have to try to do is have an effort where we go through the permitting process and the processes of building and developing with just a little bit of effort on people's parts to help manage some of the environment. And we can do that easily. Rather than going in and dredging a canal out and putting a cement seawall in, then they just make a recommendation, why don't you leave a mangrove there? And it's a simple enough solution, but in the past people didn't do that. Now they do that. Now they're much more conscientious about changing the environment. And I wish we'd done that 30 years ago, but we didn't.
Sunday morning is anything but peaceful for Dr. Sisto, his family, and his neighbors, because the manatee seekers congregate early. Researcher Bob Bondi says when properly managed, swimming with manatees can be a transforming experience.
I think that's why the refuge encourages people to come and swim with manatees, and I do the same thing. If I have friends come to visit me, and it's cool, and we can go to the refuge and visit the manatees, we do. I take them. So I think everybody that swims with manatees becomes an advocate for the plight and the problems and the causes for protecting manatees that we have.
Some manatee advocates oppose direct manatee-human contact. Nancy Sadusky is the spokesperson for the Save the Manatee Club.
Save the Manatee Club advocates what we call passive observation, and that's basically just viewing manatees from a distance. But it's for the protection of the animal, because if you're feeding manatees or touching them, you're really conditioning them to swim up to humans. And unfortunately, manatees don't know the difference between a good person and a bad person. And so there have been instances where manatees have been hurt by, intentionally hurt by people.
Human development doesn't always have a negative impact on manatees. This is the Big Bend Power Station on Tampa Bay. The 1,800 megawatt coal plant serves thousands of homes in the Tampa-St. Pete area. The plant discharges warm water into the canal, a result of the generating process. The warm water in the canal attracts manatees and lots of people who come to see the manatees at Tampa Electric's Manatee exhibit. Manatee biologist Chip Deutsch explains the dilemma presented by man-made warm water refuges like power plants.
It does leave the animals vulnerable to a plant shutdown, and that has actually occurred in the past. A couple of occasions where plants shut down, or else they weren't able to put out enough warm water, and on the order of 40 to 50 animals have died in these more northerly areas.
What is the delicate balance between people and manatees? Why can't humans learn to step lightly and delicately through nature as we build our communities and pursue our pleasures? If the environment isn't safe for manatees, can it be safe for people? Homosassa Springs State Park on Central Florida's west coast showcases lots of wildlife indigenous to the state and one honorary African hippopotamus who retired here from Hollywood. Visitors can take a brief boat ride through the spring and catch a glimpse of Florida's exquisite beauty. Many people come to Homosassa so they can visit their adopted manatee through a program run by the Save the Manatee Club. The Bowers family drove all the way from Wisconsin to visit Star, the manatee adopted by daughter Jasmine.
I saw a book in the library, and it was about manatees, and I just like sea creatures a lot, so I just decided to check it out, and I just became very interested in them.
Jasmine will get her first glimpse of Star at one of the manatee shows here at Homosassa. Today, the lecture is given by George Schultz, a retiree and longtime volunteer at the park.
My name is George. I'm a volunteer with the Florida Park Service. I would go on the river there, and we did go snorkeling sometimes and saw the manatee. That was it. I was immediately attracted to the manatees. Now, when Columbus came here and they saw these creatures, they called them the mermaids, but the sailors had been at sea for a long, long time. These animals, you always have the feeling that they definitely know you, the way they act around you, and I'm quite sure they know me. Their mouth is like the short version of an elephant trunk. They nurse their young under the flippers like the elephants under the front legs.
Star is one of the manatees participating in the show today.
Getting a back massage here. Normally they hang on to their food with their flippers. Now that is Star rolling over there. She can't get in, so she tries to get it this way. Okay, there we go.
She rolled over and she's big. It was fun.
That's the end of it. On behalf of the Park Service, I'd like to thank you. I hope you enjoyed the program. Now I have another program at 1 o'clock.
It's fun adopting a manatee, and I think other kids should do it.
Betsy Dirth is a park ranger at Homosassa Park who works with the manatees.
It's kind of job I look forward to coming to work to. I've been here since 1986. I think it's a privilege to be able to work with them, really. They're so big, they're gentle, and there aren't really, like I say, not that many of them. And so I've been with them for almost 13 years now.
Each afternoon, the manatees at Homosassa are served a dinner of lettuce and cabbage. Entrance to this restaurant is very exclusive, and the salad is said to be among the best in Florida, at least if you're a manatee.
We had one manatee that we lost during a flood that we got out of here, but 2 weeks later she was at the gate and wanted back in. We had about, I don't know, maybe five years ago now, maybe a wild manatee broke into this place to come in, wanted to be in here.
Each morning before the park opens, the manatees are given vitamins. Jonathan got to help one morning and found himself in the middle of a genuine manatee feeding frenzy.
Oh no! She's got my hand!
When you see manatees from a distance, they don't really have a lot of character. But when you get in the water with them and you start feeding them vitamins and you see how they try to get around one side and get around the other side and how they try to grab the vitamin out of your hand and how they stick their head out of the water and try to steal it from the bucket. You get a sense for how clever they are and what personality they have. It was fabulous, and I think everybody should get a chance to feed vitamins to manatees. It's just a great experience.
There's a look you'll never forget.
Homosassa veterinarian Mark Lowe says the vitamins are an attempt to duplicate the diet manatees eat in the wild.
In the wild, I think they're eating a lot of grasses that have what we call epiphytes, or snails and little grass shrimp, other little animals on these grasses. So I'm sure they're getting some other things in their diet, and maybe there's some trace minerals and vitamins that we're missing in some of the foods we're feeding. So we feed them, it's an elephant supplement. They each get about a pound of this a day to supply them with the vitamins and minerals.
Dr. Lowe is close to his manatees. He recalls the reaction of one animal after she returned from a 3-month stay at another facility for medical treatment.
When we put her in the water, for months afterwards, she would have nothing to do with me. I could be standing next to somebody feeding her vitamins, and she'd be eating the vitamins out of their hand. When I would take my hand with a vitamin and try to slip it in there to give her the vitamin, she would just immediately back off, turn around and swim away. It actually broke my heart, I think. At least she got over it.
Right now, this viewing window at Homosassa allows people to see the manatee moving slowly and gracefully through the water in its natural environment. If the wild manatee is not protected, in the future, this viewing window may be the only way to see the Florida manatee, the last few animals kept in captivity at places like this. Bruce Ackerman counts manatees. He works for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, one of several agencies in the state that takes an active role in researching and protecting manatees. Ackerman and other manatee researchers routinely conduct aerial surveys to count manatees in an effort to monitor population size and identify favorite manatee habitats.
Well, we do aerial surveys in this area a number of times a year for several different purposes. One is to count how many there are in the whole state. And so on a cold day in the winter, we'll send 20 different aircraft up in different parts of the state, each counting a separate area. So we're counting how many manatees there are and where they are, and are they near the power plants, are they near the seagrass beds, what are they doing at different times of the year.
Because manatees must come to the surface to breathe, they are often visible from the air, as are other marine mammals like dolphins.
Now we're going over a big school of dolphins. Got about 7 dolphins over here, and now they're circled up and they're interacting with each other. Dolphins are usually active all the time, so they're more easier to spot them.
Ackerman spots one last manatee before calling it a day and heading back.
Here's another one on our right side. This one may have a calf.
Biologists count manatees to estimate population size, which is difficult to determine for any wild species. But estimates must be made to find out if efforts to rescue the manatee are succeeding. The good news is that Bruce Ackerman and the other manatee census takers will soon have more animals to count. The 2 drainpipe manatees from Cocoa Beach are ready for release.
Great. People to stay with her.
The 2 drainpipe manatees from Cocoa Beach have recovered after months of rehabilitation and will be released today, along with a 3rd manatee that's also been rehabilitated. The 2 schoolchildren who discovered the animals, Christina and Sean Wilson, and the other people who helped rescue and rehabilitate the manatees, say final goodbyes, and then the animals are returned to their home. As we write this, the future of the manatee is still uncertain. The population is estimated to be just 2,600, but people have not given up. Those who care remain hopeful and dedicated to the proposition that the manatee can survive.
I don't think that anyone seriously is worried that they're going to go extinct in the next 10 or 20 years, because it would, unless there is some catastrophic series of mortality events. However, we are worried about extinction over the long term, because for manatees to have a healthy population, we need to reduce the human-related mortality, and we need to preserve habitat, seagrass beds, and other critical habitat, or else there will be no future for manatees in Florida.
We're not asking that much of people. We're not saying, oh, there shouldn't be any boats out on the waterways. I mean, that's not realistic, and we understand that. All we're asking people to do is to slow down in areas where manatees are known to be, and the signs are well posted, and what you're talking about is something that's recreation. And so what we say is, hey, slow down, enjoy the view, and protect the manatees at the same time.
Manatees have been around for 50 million years. People have been around for less than 1 million years. So they've been here 50 times longer than us, and if they're dying, this incredibly hardy species is dying off, then that's an indicator of something much bigger that's wrong with our environment. If we don't change the things that we're doing to the environment and to manatees now, I think it's very possible that there won't be any manatees around when my grandchildren would want to see one. Who wants to live in a world with no manatees? I don't.
Well, my predictions are that the manatees are in here for the slug out. They're going to be in for the fight. The manatees are very resilient. They change with the environment. They can adapt. I'm optimistic that they will. It's not a big sacrifice to make to slow down, to avoid hitting a manatee. And it's not a big sacrifice to make to set aside some pristine areas where manatees can go to feed. I think as people in general, we can make those sacrifices. And we should do that. It's in our power, and we should be obligated to do that. If we lose that component of our ability to change it and work with our planet and live with our planet, then we've lost everything. So in a way, these manatees are kind of like the canaries in a coal mine. They're kind of alerting us to problems in our environment that's going to help us to protect and make this planet a better place for us to live in the long run. And I think that's what I enjoy about manatees the most, is they're out there, they're just kind of going with the flow. They're at our mercy and they need our help, and I realize that, and that's why I'm doing this.
To the sailors discovering the New World, they looked like mermaids. But they were just the gentle manatee, quietly reminding us that paradise is fragile. People all across Florida are trying to save the manatee and rescue paradise. They cannot imagine a world without manatees. And there's still time. It's not too late to save paradise.